So I'd like to share a little bit about a koan this morning. So this is a very short interaction between a teacher and a student that comes from something called the Blue Cliff Record. And koan study is a pretty important part of our practice that we inherited. We inherited both from Soto Zen and Rinzai Zen from our teacher, our root teacher, Maizumi Roshi, and then through Bernie Glassman and Seisen Roshi. Um, and they're, both wonderful practices. And the origin of the word koan is like a public case. So it's considered to be like almost like a stating, talking about, something that is a basic principle of reality. Um, so this case, um, the, the, the case itself is a monk asked Zen master Korin, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West? And Korin said, sitting long and getting tired. Um, so this is case 17 from the Blue Cliff Record. And what's kind of why I'm sort of smiling is two inspirations for talking about this case this morning. One is I read a really great talk by a kind of a Dharma cousin of ours from Still Mind Zendo in upstate New York. Interesting too. They're they're in the same lineage. They're in White Plum lineage, like we are, um, and their transmission is through somebody who the Roshi who kind of started that center is a Jesuit priest. He's a Jesuit priest. He's a psychoanalyst. He's a professor. Super impressive guy, Robert Kennedy. And then a person that he gave transmission to runs this Still Mind Zendo. But just kind of, especially for folks that are new, that we have people who have had full authorization as Zen teachers who have been Jewish rabbis, uh, Catholic priests. So that's kind of I think a neat way in which demonstrates that Zen is available to everybody and sort of accepting, and what's the commonality in terms of what we can appreciate together. Um, so I really it's a Dharma holder from like I am from that center who there was a talk that was published in Tricycle magazine where he talked about this case. And one of the things he said about it after he was saying that when he gives meditation instruction to people on Sunday mornings, he'll ask them, maybe at the end of the whole Sunday morning program, how did that go? And a lot of people say it was hard. It was hard to sit still. It's hard what was going on in my mind or in my emotions. And my experience is often people feel like they're doing something wrong because of that. And so this kind of circles all the way back to the koan in terms of what is the meaning of Zen. And the teacher says, sitting long and getting tired. So he could have also said, having a mosquito bite and getting itchy, feeling hungry and reaching for a burrito. So he just said what was coming up for him at that time. I've been sitting a long time and I'm getting tired. And this is really the central aspect of our practice, which is being intimately, even beyond intimately, engaged with our life. and feeling and seeing and hearing and breathing and uh, thinking exactly what's happening. And even to say in the moment is is off, because once we're thinking in the moment, that's something that's already passed. So I wanted to share a couple things about this. What is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? Sitting long and getting tired. So one, and I was thinking about this, is maybe it's a little self um, self-interest, but I kind of wanted to talk about it in relationship to intensive practice. And I'll just be transparent about the self-interest part of it, is that I'm going to be there in person for the first 2 weeks of our intensive, which starts on November 1st. And I would love to have as many of you there with me. So that's the self-interest part. But so what is just taking it on the face value of sitting long and getting tired? One aspect of this is, what is the advantage of intensive training? What is the advantage of coming to a Sunday morning program and sitting for 2 periods of meditation, 2 30-minute periods of meditation? A lot of people would really, really struggle with being able to do that, being able to tolerate that, being able to tolerate whatever comes up during that time and not be screaming and running out the door. So, and my teacher, our teacher, Seisen Roshi, really, really, really emphasizes the value of intensive practice, the value of zazen, period. And it's to me, it's analogous to going on a backpack trip, where day hikes are really nice. But when you get 2 or 3 days into the backcountry and all you have is the food that you brought, however well your sleeping pad is working, and the companions that you're with, things strip down to the elemental aspects of, where are we going to sleep? What are we going to eat? Is it raining? Is it snowing? Am I warm? Am I cold? It's very, very basic kind of aspects of life. And being in intensive practice is a lot like that too. We sort of voluntarily, whether it's for an hour or a day or 90 days, we voluntarily put ourselves into this structure that we don't, in some ways, we don't have a lot of choice about what the schedule is. And if we let the schedule be our teacher, we just do what the schedule is. We're wearing very, very basic clothing. We're just going to eat the food that we brought. And the whole purpose of that is to simplify the container so that we get to actually deeply be into exactly what we've done this morning, which is really feeling into what's happening in my life. What is my life in this moment? What is this even beyond my life? What is this in this moment? And so there's a couple opportunities coming up that Sweetwater is sponsoring, hosting around intensive practice, which is next Saturday. I know it's the 25th of October, so hopefully I'm telling you that correctly. But there's a 1-day and a Zazen Kai, an all-day sitting that's happening that this center is sponsoring. And then starting on November 1st is November 2nd. Thank you. I'm arriving on November 1st, so that's in my head. On November 2nd is the beginning of a 5-week intensive. So it's going to go through the month of November, and I believe include Rohatsu Sesshin, the first week of December. So, a great opportunity for any part of any of those to be able to kind of put ourselves in what appears to be a more restrictive environment. Um, and and just like, just like going to the gym an hour a day, even every day, versus working out all day long. There's different things that come of it. And so the opportunity to really drop into um, a kind of a different experience of the meditation practice. I'm not going to say better, deeper, or whatever, because that's just a value judgment about it. And it might feel that way and not feel that way at any given time. But it definitely is like uh, other stuff kind of gets pushed aside in terms of the logistics of life to just focus on this. And in my experience, there is great benefit in that. And it's so interesting, closing circle of, retreat practice. Almost uniformly, so much gratitude is expressed about, and on any given day, in any given moment, might not have been feeling that, but just the gratitude of just to be intimate with what's happening, and to some extent with one another, with the support of the sangha, of the community. So that's my I guess pitch for intensive practice, which I always like to say that I quit being a brownie when you had to go door to door and sell calendars. So proselytizing is not something that is supernatural for me. But we have these two opportunities coming up, and it seems a shame not to share what might be of potentially of benefit to any of you or anybody else. So the case came up from that perspective of the actual fact of sometimes sitting long and getting tired, and how it exemplifies so much what we think we want to get out of whatever we're doing. And generally, it's the good stuff, right? I want to sit long and get enlightened. I want to sit long and get wiser. I want to sit long and be less troubled. And all of those things could happen. And on a certain level, it is a goalless practice, because those are all ideas about how we think we're going to change ourselves or the circumstances of our life. And I wanted to read a couple of excerpts from, so this person's name, I want to credit him, is Matthias Esho Burke. And he's the one who's from Stillmind, Zendo. And a couple things he said. Oh, this was good. And in a way, it's not even tired, because if you have truly looked into what it is like in your body when you say you're tired, it's incredibly fluid, moving, and changing, not fixed. Reality doesn't have a label, only our thoughts do. And then most of the time, we can't see reality because of all the labels we have put up. It's as if you have all kinds of Post-its on your screen, and then all you can see are the Post-its. I wanted to mention this also. I sent this talk to the link to this talk to one of you. I listened to a talk with Joseph Goldstein yesterday, and he's talking about the actual experience of the concept of non-self. And it was the most helpful talk I've ever heard on it. So I want to just put that out there in terms of anybody that might find that helpful. It was on from the app 10% Happier with Dan Harris. So if you have access to that, any way you get apps, this is a very recent talk with Joseph Goldstein, who's an infamous Vipassana teacher, founded Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, with Jack Kornfield and Sharon Salzberg. And he's something about Joseph. He's been practicing for 50 years. He's it's like he's a scientist of the mind, and he's so devoted to like granular kind of understanding of what's happening. So, okay, that's all the preface. The thing I wanted to share with you that he said as a way to kind of get beyond the thought of no self or non-self. What is talking about just the experience of feeling, hearing, touching, uh, tasting, cognition. And actually, so if you can imagine, like just putting your foot on the floor and just feeling hard, or just feeling slick, or just feeling soft. And what he was talking about is that in there need not be any, I am putting my foot on the floor. There's just the direct experience of hard or slippery. And in that sort of granular experience of what our life actually is in the moment, it's a doorway into this sense of how do I get outside of the sense of I, me, mine. So anyway, that's a bit of a sidebar, but I just found it extremely helpful. And what's the relevance to this case is that the meaning of Bodhidharma is coming from the West. And what is the meaning? Is it that the word used? Yeah, it is actually. What is the meaning of Zen? Is this you can't even use the word deep. This immediate experience of what our life is. And it's beyond the what my life is. It's beyond the I of my life. Um, so, it's a big invitation. That's what it is. It's a big invitation. And just that you're in the room is you're in the invitation um, to explore it however you want to. But the sitting long and getting tired, that's just what happens in our life. It's whatever's happening in our life. And in my experience, and maybe your experience, the longing is to be intimate with that. The longing is to get out of my head and all my judgments about myself and everybody else and actually experience life on its own terms directly in that kind of way. And that's when stuff really opens up. That's where the freedom is. And to some extent, sitting hard and getting tired can be helpful in that process. But it's not a promise. For sure, it's not a promise. I can tell you after 40 years of practice, it is not a promise. It's an invitation. And it's not anything anybody can do for me or for each of us. But it is, so I wanted to read you the last thing he says. And then I think I'll stop. What is the meaning of Zen? The great irony is that when we stop resisting what is, our suffering is transformed by itself. The opposite of resistance is love. We learn to unconditionally accept what is. I really liked that. The opposite of resistance is love. Because we open up. And then the ending here was, there is no other goal to meditation than being right here, in a way, a non-goal, being whatever is right now. And that includes our thoughts, our judgments, our resistance. It includes all of that. It's not, I'm going to get out of that, and then I'm going to get to being right here. No, it's that when that's what's happening. We were talking on Thursday night, and um, a member here was actually crediting Choa with saying, you know, when I'm angry, I'm just angry. That's what it is right in this moment. It's not some idea that, well, I shouldn't be because I'm, trying to be wiser. That's just such a trap because it's resistance to what is. And the other side of resistance is love. I really liked that. And then he says at the end, when we accept our resistance, or maybe also our resistance to accepting our resistance, we start to include. Zen is always all inclusive, not one thing is separate. So this is a fundamental all inclusiveness, just because it's the way things are. Nothing can get left out. Nothing is left out. And often we think we're the ones who are left out. And it's not possible. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions or comments.